of aggression in Korea, among other imperialist merits. As a scene, Lieutenant Commander John Sidney has a very good name. Following are the notes from Dr. Barrel's interview with the Yankee pilot. Could you tell me your name, serial number, and rank? My name is John Sidney McCain and I am a Lieutenant Commander in the U.S. Navy, serial number 624787. I understand and speak some Spanish. I studied it in school and I have been in Spain several times. On one of those occasions I visited the Navy Academy and met Prince Carlos in the course of the interview. On various occasions he showed that knowledge of the language, saying some words, dates, and so forth in Spanish, or using it when he thought the interpreter was seeking the corresponding French word. Naturally, from the very beginning this established a more direct communication between us, and more than one question or my response was made directly in Spanish. Immediately afterward, I asked him about the date and circumstances of his capture. On October 26, 1967 I was overflying Hanoi in an A-4E plane based on the carrier Oriskany when my plane was hit by a ground-to-air missile. I bailed out, colliding in the air with the remains of the plane, and I landed in one of the lakes in the center of Hanoi, in the middle of the water. On landing I tried to get free of my parachute, but could not move, and did not realize why I could not move my arms or legs, but it was because of the injuries. Injuries? Yes, as a result of colliding with the remains of the plane, I fractured my right leg at the knee, and both arms, the right one in 3 places. Moreover, I dislocated both shoulders. What happened next? That is, what was the capture itself like? Well, many people gathered around since it was the center of Hanoi and at midday. Soldiers, militiamen, or civilians? I could not determine exactly, because they had removed their clothing in order to take me out of the water. Well, go on. From there, they took me to a military hospital in Hanoi, a large hospital where they operated on me and attended to the multiple fractures. I understand I received more than a liter of blood. Were you the object of any physical or moral violence? No, although at the time of capture I could sense the people's hate or indignation, there were no insults or violence of any type. On the contrary, you have seen how I am recovering from my injuries. But were you not afraid of being the object of violent treatment if you were captured? Actually, I never thought I would become a prisoner. Therefore those fears never came up. Did you never think of the possibility of being captured? No. I was traveling at high altitude. I felt completely safe in the plane. I am considered one of the best pilots. What made you join the U.S. Navy? Difficult to read. There was a family reason since I have many relatives in that branch of service. In particular, my grandfather was difficult to read in World War II. He was one of those who saw the Japanese sign the Act of Surrender, and a naval destroyer bears his name. And my father is also an admiral. He's chief of the Pacific Command of the U.S. Armed Forces. Actually, it is a matter of military tradition. Once of my forebears was a colonel in Washington's Independence Forces. Another was a general in the War of Secession. Thus it was natural for me to follow a military career. Of course my father was not always an admiral. During World War II he was a commander of a submarine. He has been in the Navy since 1927 and has been an admiral since 1965. He holds the highest rank in the Navy. If I had not been downed, I would have become an admiral at an earlier age than my father. Theoretically, General Abrams is his subordinate. Theoretically? Yes, although in practice, because of the importance of this war, General Creighton Abrams receives his orders directly from Washington. I do not understand this about in theory and in practice. I thought that in military life everything is standardized in an inflexible manner. Well, look, in fact Abrams is his subordinate, but since the Tet Offensive of 1968, in view of the gravity of the situation, Abrams, instead of asking for instructions from my father, who is in Honolulu, so that he in turn would ask for them from Washington, went directly to Washington for them because the war is here in Vietnam and my father also has Okinawa, Korea, and so forth under his command. That is why, since the war is so important, he receives his instructions directly from Washington. It is a political problem also, not only military. Well, let us leave these things about political and military aside. They are too complex. At any rate, I do not believe that your father likes the situation very much. That his subordinates receive orders directly from above. Look, my father is a very intelligent person, but when the bombings of the North began, Johnson asked Abrams' opinion, not my father's, because Abrams is in Saigon, in the war. Now I am going to speak about my wife, he says spontaneously. She is not in the armed forces, he added with a certain humor. I saw her the last time in August of 1967. At that time I was on the aircraft carrier Forrestal when a fire broke out which damaged it heavily and it had to be sent for repairs to the United States. At that time I miraculously escaped with my life because I was in my airplane and the 2 pilots on my left and the 2 on my right were killed. How did that happen? A plane caught fire and one of its rockets went off. This in turn caused other explosions. There were 135 deaths, almost all the airplanes were destroyed and the ship was seriously damaged. As a result of the fire I became famous on TV. As one who miraculously escaped death, no? Yes, but in addition I was able to see my family and stay there nearly a month. I then returned this time to the aircraft carrier Oriskany and 1 month later I was shot down. You said that you were going to talk to me about your wife, but you continue on the subject of the war. She is very pretty. Before marrying me she was a model for magazines and on TV. We have a 3-year-old girl. When I saw her she was still a baby. She also has 2 children from a former marriage. She now returned to work as a model on TV. How did you find out? I had a letter from her after I became a prisoner. Yes, they authorized me to receive a letter and presents on Christmas Eve and I was able to send greeting cards. Would you like me to relay a message for you? If you would be so kind. Tell her I am well, that I wish her happiness, and not to worry about me. The address. Her name is Carol McCain, Mrs. Carol McCain. She lives in McCain. Has to write her address with his left hand because the Spanish-speaking interviewer can't understand. 553 Patio Lane, Orange Park, Florida, USA. What schooling did you have? I went to the Naval Academy. I took 2 university majors, electrical engineering and naval architecture. The courses were very difficult. 1,200 of us began and only 400 graduated. Discipline was very strict also. I was also in the Spanish Naval Academy. It was there that I met Prince Carlos, as I said before. When I finished I had 2 choices. To be a naval officer or a pilot. I chose to be a pilot. I had to study another 1.5 years and I graduated in 1958. I trained intensively. I flew many hours in training to become a jet pilot. Many? Yes, 4,000. They really demand 200 but I flew 4,000 hours. I wanted to become a test pilot. It is fascinating to test new models. At any rate the difference between 200 and 4,000 appears to be great. Well, look, it was because I wanted to be an astronaut. That is why I also engage in a great deal of sports, boxing, wrestling, swimming, camping, and so forth. And what happened? I had to come to Vietnam. What is your religion? I am a Protestant. Being in captivity, has your faith increased? Do you have hopes for the future? My beliefs have always been more or less the same intensity. As long as the war lasts I do not have much hope for the future. A photograph from this interview. Unquote. You know, this is really frustrating to me because of all the information he gave away. Training requirements, his training experience, the exact model aircraft he was flying, giving new talking points to the communists about his father being passed over, and while I doubt this is the entire transcript of the interview, McCain supposedly drank 3 cups of coffee. This is a 1-cup conversation. Gave detailed information on damage and casualties in a military accident, and so much more that it's inexcusable that he gave away that much information. He's even bluntly honest about the reason why he liked his wife. She was a model before the crippling car accident, prompting him to seek out an extramarital affair with Cindy. Look,